Laura Bennett stood frozen in her kitchen, the warmth of the oven a stark contrast to the icy realization that her 5-year marriage to Ryan Bennett had become a battlefield where her son's happiness was the first casualty, all because of a cake that symbolized so much more. At 27, Laura had envisioned a life filled with love and laughter, a dream that seemed within reach when she married Ryan, a man whose passionate pursuit had once made her feel like the only woman in the world. But as the years passed, that passion morphed into a dominating presence, one that prioritized his younger sister Sophie over the family they'd built together. Now, with their son Ethan having just celebrated his 4th birthday, Laura found herself grappling with a resentment that had been simmering beneath the surface, threatening to boil over in the face of Ryan's unwavering favoritism. Laura and Ryan's journey began 6 years ago, when she was a 21-year-old fresh out of college, working full-time at a mid-sized marketing firm in their suburban town. Ryan, then 24, was a charismatic account manager at the same company, his confidence and charm drawing Laura in like a moth to a flame. Their courtship was a whirlwind of late-night dinners, weekend hikes, and stolen kisses in the office break room, culminating in Ryan's proposal on a crisp autumn evening under a canopy of golden leaves. "I can't imagine my life without you, Laura," he'd said, his voice thick with emotion as he slipped a simple ring onto her finger. She'd said yes without hesitation, her heart soaring with the promise of a future together. They married a year later, and Laura continued working full-time, her career a source of pride as she balanced her professional ambitions with her new role as a wife. But when Ethan was born a year into their marriage, Laura scaled back to part-time work, wanting to be present for her son's early years while still contributing to the household. Ryan, now 30, had supported the decision, at least outwardly, but Laura soon noticed a shift in his demeanor, a growing tendency to assert control over their home life that left her feeling more like a subordinate than a partner. The cracks in their marriage widened with the presence of Ryan's 20-year-old sister, Sophie Bennett. The 10-year age gap between Ryan and Sophie had always fostered an indulgent relationship, one Laura hadn't minded during their dating years. Back then, Sophie's frequent visits to Ryan's apartment were a minor inconvenience, her bubbly personality a welcome addition to their dates. Laura assumed they were simply close siblings, a dynamic she admired as an only child herself. But after the wedding, Sophie's behavior changed, revealing a sense of entitlement that Laura hadn't anticipated. Sophie began dropping by their home unannounced, often at the most inconvenient times, during dinner, late at night, or on weekends when Laura was trying to create special moments with Ethan. She'd breeze through the door without so much as a text, expecting to be served as if Laura were a personal chef rather than a sister-in-law. "Brother, I'm here again," Sophie would announce, addressing only Ryan, her tone casual but demanding, as if Laura and Ethan were invisible fixtures in the room. She never brought a token of appreciation, not a bottle of wine, not a small gift, nothing to acknowledge the burden her visits placed on Laura. Ryan, rather than addressing Sophie's lack of courtesy, expected Laura to accommodate her demands without question. On one such evening, Laura had just finished preparing a simple dinner of roast chicken and vegetables for herself, Ryan, and Ethan, the kitchen filled with the comforting aroma of rosemary and garlic. She'd set the table carefully, hoping for a quiet family meal after a long day at work. But as they sat down, the doorbell rang, and Sophie sauntered in, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "I'm starving, brother," she said, plopping onto the couch without a glance at Laura. Laura sighed, her heart sinking, and began plating an extra portion, stretching the meal to accommodate their uninvited guest. She served Sophie, who didn't even offer a thank you, and returned to the kitchen to scrape together leftovers for herself, cold chicken and a few wilted vegetables, hardly a meal. Ryan, instead of acknowledging Laura's effort, blamed her aloud in front of Sophie. "You should have been more considerate, Laura," he said, his voice sharp. "You knew Sophie might stop by." Sophie offered a half-hearted apology. "Sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to cause trouble," but the gleam in her eyes betrayed her enjoyment of Ryan's preferential treatment. As Laura ate her meager meal alone at the counter, Ryan and Sophie chatted on the sofa, leaving the dining table a mess of crumbs and dirty plates. They never acknowledged Ethan, who sat quietly with his toy truck, or Laura, treating them more like hired help than family. The pattern continued for months, each visit eroding Laura's patience a little more. She tried to address it with Ryan, her voice measured but firm. "Ryan, Sophie needs to give us a heads up before coming over, she'd said one night after Sophie left, the dishes still soaking in the sink. It's not fair to expect me to drop everything for her. Ryan's response was dismissive, his tone bordering on irritation. She's my sister, Laura. She's family. You need to be more understanding. His words stung, a reminder that in his eyes, Sophie's needs always came first, even over those of his wife and son. Laura swallowed her frustration, not wanting to escalate the argument in front of Ethan, but the resentment began to fester, a quiet ache that grew with each unannounced visit. The breaking point came one evening, a week after Ethan's 4th birthday party, a joyful day filled with balloons, laughter, and a homemade cake. Laura had spent hours decorating with Ethan's favorite dinosaurs. She was preparing to give Ethan a bath, the bathroom filled with the scent of lavender bubble bath, when Ryan's voice boomed through the house. "Laura, you need to go buy a cake for Sophie," he shouted, his tone leaving no room for argument. Laura poked her head out, Ethan clinging to her leg, his hair damp from the steam. "It's late, Ryan," she said, glancing at the clock. It was nearly 8 p.m. "Can't it wait until tomorrow?" Sophie, sprawled on the couch in a pair of designer jeans, chimed in, her voice petulant. "I want it now, brother. I've had a rough day." Ryan turned to Laura, his expression hard. "You're delaying things, Laura. Just go. Take Ethan with you if you have to." Feeling compelled, Laura suppressed her frustration, bundled Ethan into his jacket, and headed to the cake shop, her heart heavy with the weight of Ryan's disregard. As she drove, she overheard Ryan and Sophie's conversation through the open window, their voices carrying in the quiet evening air. "She's so inconsiderate," Sophie said, her tone dripping with disdain. "I don't know why you married her, brother. You could have done better." Ryan's reply was a knife to Laura's heart. "I wonder that myself sometimes." Ethan, too young to grasp the words, sensed the tension, his small hand tightening around Laura's as they walked into the shop. Suppressing her emotions, Laura forced a smile. "What kind of cake do you want, Ethan?" she asked, her voice gentle. Ethan's face lit up, his earlier unease forgotten. "One with lots of fruits, Mama," he said cheerfully. They arrived just before closing, finding the chocolate cake Sophie desired and a fruit-loaded one for Ethan, its vibrant strawberries and kiwi slices a perfect match for his request. Laura purchased both, hoping the gesture might ease the tension at home. Back at the house, Laura served the chocolate cake to Sophie and Ryan, who barely acknowledged her effort, their laughter filling the living room as they reminisced about childhood memories. Laura then prepared Ethan's cake, cutting a generous slice and placing it in front of him at the dining table, his eyes sparkling with delight. "Look, Mama. Strawberries," he exclaimed, clapping his hands. But before Ethan could take a bite, Sophie pointed at the cake, her voice sharp. "I want that one, brother," she said, her entitlement on full display. Before Laura could react, Ryan reached over, slid Ethan's plate in front of Sophie, and ignored Ethan's protests. "That's mine, Daddy." As tears welled in his eyes, Ryan's justification was cold. "I bought the cake with my earnings, Laura. I have the right to choose for Ethan." Sophie smirked, taking a bite of the fruit cake, while Ethan's lip trembled, his small hands clutching the edge of the table. Laura's emotions, held back for so long, erupted. "This is unacceptable, Ryan," she said, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. "Ethan picked that cake. You can't just take it from him because Sophie wants it." Ryan's eyes narrowed, his response a threat that chilled her to the bone. "If you're going to be like this, maybe we should just get a divorce," he snapped, his words hanging heavy in the air. Ethan, who had stopped crying, looked up at Laura with wide, anxious eyes, his small hand grabbing hers. After a moment of silence, he spoke, his voice small but steady. "Mom, I also love cake with strawberries on it." "Yes, it's really delicious," he said, reaching for a piece of the chocolate cake Sophie had discarded, trying to ease the tension in his own innocent way. Laura's heart broke at his attempt to comfort her, the realization that Ethan was enduring too much for a 4-year-old hitting her like a wave. When she saw Sophie reaching for Ethan's new slice, Laura acted swiftly, lifting the plate and taking Ethan to the next room. "You can enjoy your cake here, sweetheart," she whispered, closing the door behind them. Ryan's voice followed, his apology directed not to Laura or Ethan but to Sophie. "I'm sorry for being stingy, Sophie," he said, his tone soft, as if Laura's feelings were irrelevant. Laura wanted to retort, to scream at him for his callousness, but she held back for Ethan's sake, her focus on the little boy who sat cross-legged on the floor, happily eating his cake, his smile a heartwarming sight amidst the chaos. After they finished, Laura gave Ethan a late bath, the warm water soothing them both, and they curled up in his bed, the soft glow of his nightlight casting shadows on the dinosaur-themed walls. As Ethan drifted off, his small hand in hers, Laura lay awake, the events of the evening replaying in her mind. She knew something had to change. Ryan's favoritism, Sophie's entitlement, and the disregard for her and Ethan's feelings had pushed her to a breaking point. Tomorrow, she resolved, would be the start of a new chapter, one where her son's happiness would come first, even if it meant facing the storm that was brewing in her marriage. Laura Bennett woke to the sound of Ethan's cries, her heart shattering as she discovered his broken piggy bank, a gift from her father. It saved coins stolen by Sophie Bennett, a final betrayal that cemented her resolve to break free from Ryan's toxic favoritism. Ethan, who always said goodnight to his piggy bank, was inconsolable, his small frame shaking in Laura's arms. When she confronted Ryan, his casual response, "Sophie needed money, so she took it," ignited her fury. Holding Ethan, Laura felt his pain as her own, tears streaming down her face as she voiced her anger. "You care more about your sister than our son," she said, breaking her silence on arguments in front of Ethan. Ryan, without a word, retrieved hidden divorce papers, shoved them at her, and stormed out, leaving Ethan sobbing harder. Unable to bear Ethan's hurt, Laura suggested skipping daycare, and his faint smile, "Yes," gave her hope. They spent the day bonding at the park, playing hide and seek, and laughing on the slide. At home, Ethan napped on her lap, his gentle breathing a balm to her soul. But the peace was shattered when Sophie entered the house, searching for something. Laura hid with Ethan in the closet, overhearing Sophie's call to Ryan about their failed search. After Sophie left, Laura packed essentials and took Ethan to her parents' house, 2 stations away. They welcomed her without questions, and Laura shared everything, including her fear of staying home. Her mother suggested Sophie sought her cash cards, recalling Laura's secret role as a CEO in the handmade goods industry, a fact she'd hidden from Ryan, who only provided $200 monthly for food while she used her savings for Ethan's needs. Laura recorded a conversation with Ryan, where he demanded her part-time money for Sophie, angrily pushing the divorce papers when she refused, claiming she lived off his money. She left with Ethan, seeking refuge at her parents'. A happy meal of hamburgers with her family, Ethan's joyful declaration, "Gran's hamburgers are the best," solidified her decision to divorce Ryan. With her father's lawyer friend, Laura formalized the divorce. She learned Sophie's casino and shopping debts drove their actions, with Ryan as her guarantor, planning to use Laura's savings. Ryan signed a pledge for $340 monthly child support, later admitting his financial manipulation and wishing her happiness. Laura stayed with her parents, resumed her role as company president, and found joy with her family. Ethan thrived, calling their pet dog his younger brother, his laughter filling their days. Ryan and Sophie, disowned by their parents, faced their consequences, while Laura embraced a peaceful life, her heart full of love for Ethan and gratitude for the family that truly cherished them.